My name is Ilara, and for 5 years, I believed my sole purpose on this earth was to make myself small enough to fit into the narrow, dusty box of my husband's expectations. The sound of the front door slamming wasn't just a noise, it was a tremor that ran through the very foundations of my carefully constructed prison. I felt it in the marrow of my bones, a jarring announcement that Liam was home. The silver polish I was using smeared across the antique picture frame I was holding, a frame that held a photograph of us from a time when his smile didn't look like it cost him something. My heart, that traitorous organ, began to beat a frantic, familiar rhythm against my ribs. Part fear, part a desperate, withering hope that today might be different. I heard his briefcase hit the marble floor of the foyer with a heavy thud. Not placed, not set down, thrown. It was a sound that spoke of a day spent wrestling with a world that refused to bow to him, and now he was home, to the one place where it always did. I quickly wiped my hands on the simple, worn apron I always wore, a uniform of my own submission, and stepped out of the living room. He stood there, a silhouette of sharp lines and imported wool against the fading afternoon light from the open door. Liam was a handsome man. Even now, in the thick of my resentment, I could admit that. But his beauty was like a frozen lake, dazzling on the surface, leafily cold beneath. Lara. My name was a sigh of exasperation on his lips. He didn't even look at me, his eyes scanning the entrance hall as if inspecting a hotel he found vaguely unsatisfactory. Is there a reason the house smells like lemons? It's cloying. Can't you use something less common? The words were a pinprick, one of 1,000. I felt the familiar sting, but I'd learned to let it bleed internally. I was polishing the silver, Liam. You mentioned your mother was coming for dinner tomorrow. I wanted everything to be perfect. He finally turned his gaze to me, and it was like being doused in ice water. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, swept over me from head to toe, lingering on my simple ponytail, the lack of makeup on my face, the humble apron, a flicker of something, disappointment, disdain, crossed his features. Perfect, he repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. A lofty goal, one that requires a certain finesse, something you consistently seem to miss. You look like you've been cleaning out a stable, not preparing for a dinner party. I felt my cheeks grow warm. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that the common lemon polish was the only kind that didn't leave a haze on the intricate patterns of his family's heirlooms. I wanted to ask him if he'd prefer I wear a ball gown to scrub his toilets, but I didn't. I just lowered my head, a gesture he took for submission, but which was really just a way to hide the fire in my eyes. I'm sorry, I whispered, the lie tasting like ash. I'll air the house out. See that you do, he said, striding past me toward his study. And for God's sake, change before I come out. I can't stand the sight of you in that rag. The door to his study closed with a soft, definitive click, a sound more isolating than the front door's slam. I stood there in the sudden silence, my hands clenched at my sides. The scent of lemons once clean and bright, now felt suffocating. This was my life, a beautiful, spacious, soul-crushing cage. I walked back into the living room, my movements mechanical. The picture frame was still in my hand. I looked down at our smiling faces, frozen in a moment of a past I could barely remember. The man in that photo had looked at me like I held the stars. Now, he looked at me like I was a smudge on his lens. A single hot tear escaped, tracing a path through the fine layer of dust on my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. It left marks. It showed weakness. And in this house, weakness was an invitation for a predator. But as I stood there, a strange thing happened. The tear, as it fell, had landed on the back of the photograph, warping the cheap cardboard. I went to wipe it away, and my fingers brushed against a slight ridge. Frowning, I turned the frame over. The backing was coming loose at one corner, a tiny flap of brown paper lifting away. Curiosity, a feeling I'd long since suppressed, prickled at me. I slipped my fingernail into the gap and carefully peeled it back. Tucked inside, against the actual photograph, wasn't just the cardboard. There was a small, folded square of thick, expensive paper. My heart began to pound for a different reason now. This wasn't a random piece of packing material. This was intentional. With trembling fingers, I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was an old, faded receipt from a jeweler. The date was from a few months before our wedding. The item listed was a pair of diamond earrings, a significant purchase. My breath caught in my throat. Liam had given me pearl earrings for our wedding. He said diamonds were too flashy, that pearls suited my quiet elegance. But this receipt, it was made out to him, and scrawled in the memo line in a loopy feminine handwriting that was definitely not mine, were two words: "Always yours, Isabella." The world tilted on its axis. Isabella. The name was a ghost in our marriage. A beautiful, sophisticated friend from his work, he always assured me was just that, a friend. I'd never had a reason to doubt him. I was too busy trying to be the wife he wanted. But this was proof. Proof that the cracks in our life weren't just my imagination. They were real, and they ran deep, and they had a name. The polished silver, the lemon scent, the insult about my clothes, it all faded into a dull roar. This tiny piece of paper, hidden away in the skeleton of our happy memory, was a key. A key to a truth I had been too blind, too trusting, too small to see. I carefully refolded the receipt and slipped it into the pocket of my apron, right next to my heart. The weight of it was insignificant, yet it felt like it was anchoring me to the earth for the first time in years. Liam thought he was the only one with secrets. He thought I was just the quiet little woman who polished his silver and shrunk under his gaze. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The ghost in his house was about to wake up. And I knew with a chilling certainty that my first order of business was to find out everything I could about Isabella. The game had just changed, and he didn't even know we were playing. The silence in the house the next morning was a living thing, thick and heavy with the words left unsaid. Liam had left for work early, dispensing with his usual critique of my coffee, which was a relief so profound it felt like a holiday. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, the air itself seemed to lighten, as if the very molecules had been holding their breath. I moved through my chores with a new, feverish purpose. Every white surface, every swept floor was no longer an act of submission. It was a reconnaissance mission. I was the warden of this prison, and I was now secretly mapping the escape routes. My mind was a whirlwind, a cyclone centered on that single damning name, Isabella. I needed information. I needed a weapon. The receipt was a spark, but I needed a flame to set his perfect world on fire. As I dusted the bookshelves in his study, a room I was usually forbidden from entering unless to clean, my eyes scanned the titles, the papers on his desk, the framed accolades. It was all a monument to Liam, a shrine to his own success. There was no trace of me here, no photo of us. My fingers itched to open his laptop, to dig through his files, but I wasn't foolish. Liam was meticulous. He would know. No, I had to be smarter, subtler. I had to use the one thing he never suspected I had, my mind. It was as I was vacuuming the hallway that the doorbell chimed, its cheerful sound a jarring intrusion into my plotting. I switched off the vacuum, my senses on high alert. We rarely had unexpected guests. Peering through the peephole, I saw a uniformed courier holding a long, flat box of gleaming black cardboard, tied with a thick, silken silver ribbon. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. This was no ordinary delivery. I opened the door, forcing a small, polite smile. "Can I help you?" "Delivery for Mr. Liam Thorne," the young man said, his voice crisp and professional. He held out a digital device for me to sign. "Requires a signature." My hand was steady as I scrawled my name, a forgery of the meek signature I usually used. "Thank you." He handed me the box. It was heavier than it looked, and the cardboard was textured, velvety against my fingertips. There was no return address, only Liam's name and our address embossed in a sharp silver font. The air around it seemed to crackle with unspoken importance. I carried it into the kitchen, placing it on the granite island as if it were a live bomb. My heart was hammering again, but this time it was a drumbeat of grim anticipation. I knew, with a certainty that went beyond intuition, that this box was a catalyst. It was going to change everything. I couldn't open it, not yet. The seal was pristine, a complex fold of paper and wax. Liam would notice, but I could wait. I had become an expert at waiting. The hours dragged by. I finished my cleaning, the black box a dark star exerting its gravitational pull from the center of the kitchen. I prepared a simple lunch, I knew he wouldn't come home for. I watched the clock, each tick a countdown to the confrontation I knew was coming. Finally, at exactly 6:30, I heard the key in the lock. Liam strode in, his phone pressed to his ear, a wide, charming smile on his face. A smile that never reached his eyes when he looked at me. Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it too. It's going to be the event of the season, he was saying, his voice a purr of confidence. He glanced at me, and the smile vanished, replaced by his usual mask of mild irritation. He ended the call. Elara, is dinner ready? It will be in 20 minutes, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I gestured to the box. This came for you. It looked important. His eyes snapped to the box, and for a fleeting second, I saw it. A flash of pure, unadulterated excitement. A boyish glee that was so foreign on his face, it was almost shocking. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a studied nonchalance. But I had seen it. I had seen the crack. Oh, good, it's here, he said, crossing the room and picking up the box as if it were the Holy Grail. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he turned it over in his hands, admiring it. This, Elara, is what separates the players from the spectators. What is it? I asked, pouring him a glass of wine, playing my part. He finally broke the seal, the sound of tearing paper unnaturally loud in the quiet kitchen. He lifted the lid, peeling back layers of black tissue paper. And there it was. Nestled inside was an invitation, but it was unlike any I had ever seen. It was a slab of heavy, cream-colored cardstock, the edges gilded with real gold leaf. The script was embossed, raised and elegant under my kitchen lights, but it was the words that made my blood run cold. A grand celestial ball requests the honor of your presence to celebrate the inauguration of the Aurora Hotel. Black tie, gold tier invitation. The Aurora. My Aurora. The hotel I had spent the last 3 years building in secret under a corporate alias, funded by the small, brilliant tech company I had founded and sold in my early 20s. A part of my life Liam knew nothing about. And he was holding an invitation to its grand opening. The irony was so perfect, so devastating. It was all I could do not to laugh in his face. He was beaming, utterly oblivious to the earthquake shaking my soul. The Aurora, he breathed, his voice full of reverence. This is the most exclusive ticket in the city. They're only inviting the true elite. This is it, Elara. This is my golden ticket. The contacts I'll make there, this could secure the Henderson account. This could make me a partner. You looked at me, and his expression was one of pure, unvarnished pity. It's a shame you can't truly appreciate what this means. These are the kinds of circles I move in, the real world. The condescension in his voice was a physical blow, but this time it didn't hurt. It fueled me. He was holding my triumph in his hands and using it to belittle me. It looks very expensive, I said softly, looking down at my apron. He laughed, a short, harsh sound. That's one word for it. This is power, Ilara. Something you wouldn't understand. He studied the invitation again, a frown creasing his brow. It says +1. A shame, really. My head snapped up. A shame? Well, obviously, I can't take you, he said, as if explaining something simple to a child. He gestured with the invitation toward me. Look at you. You'd be a fish out of water. These events, the women there are sophisticated. They're CEOs, investors, socialites. They wear couture. They discuss art and finance. You'd be uncomfortable, and frankly, you'd embarrass me. Each word was a carefully aimed dart, meant to deflate and control, and for years they would have worked, but now they just solidified my resolve. He saw a timid, uneducated housewife. He didn't see the woman who had built a multi-million-dollar company from her dorm room. He didn't see the woman who was about to become the most powerful hostess in the city. Of course, I murmured, turning back to the stove to hide the fierce, triumphant smile that was threatening to break free. I understand. Who will you take, then? He didn't even hesitate. Isabella. She's perfect for this. She knows how to work a room. She looks the part. She'll be an asset. Isabella. The name hung in the air between us, the final piece of the puzzle snapping into place. He was going to take his mistress to my gala, to my hotel, using an invitation I had secretly authorized. My head of security, the loyal Mr. Thorne, a man Liam had never met, had added his name to the list as Bide instructed, a test Liam had just spectacularly failed. He was so busy planning his triumph, he didn't realize he was walking directly into my trap. He thought he was going to a party. He was actually attending his own execution. Then I hope you and Isabella have a wonderful time, I said, my voice barely a whisper, laced with a sweetness that was more deadly than any poison. He mistook it for defeat. We will, he said confidently, already turning away, the precious invitation held tightly in his hand. We certainly will. And as he walked out of the kitchen, I knew the next move was mine. The invitation had been delivered. The players were taking their positions, and the queen was finally ready to leave her corner of the board. The days that followed were a masterclass in performance. I became a ghost in my own home, a silent, efficient shadow that Liam barely registered, while I built the very stage upon which his downfall would play out. It began with a trip to the grocery store, a mundane errand that served as my cover. Locked in a restroom stall, the air thick with artificial lemon scent, I pulled the sleek, hidden phone from the deepest pocket of my plain wool coat. My fingers, usually clumsy with the cheap, cracked device Liam thought was my only phone, flew across the glass screen with practiced ease. A single, encrypted message to Mr. Thorne, my steadfast general manager at the Aurora. The package has been delivered. The guest of honor has accepted. Proceed with Phase 1. Ensure the guest list is updated. Mr. Thorne's companion is to be a Miss Isabella Reed. Grant her the same courtesy. His reply was instantaneous. Understood, Madame Ilara. All will be prepared. The stage awaits its true director. A grim smile touched my lips. The trap was set. My next call was to Anya, my oldest friend, a whirlwind of a woman who ran the city's most exclusive boutique and knew the truth of my double life. Elora, I was beginning to think you'd fallen off the planet, or worse, been fully absorbed into the beige wallpaper of that mausoleum you live in. I need a dress, Anya, I said, cutting straight to the point, my voice low. The gala at the Aurora. There was a beat of stunned silence, then a delighted intake of breath. Oh my God, it's time, isn't it? The grand unveiling. Tell me everything. Is he bringing the, what's her name? Isabella. And yes, he told me I'd embarrass him. Anya's laughter rang out, vengeful and joyful. I have a piece just came in from Paris. It's called Vindication. Black, deceptively simple. Costs more than his car. It has your name written all over it. Don't thank me. Just promise me a front row seat to the carnage. Now, what about hair and makeup? You can't show up looking like, well, like you do now. No offense. None taken. I have a plan for that too. Tamisha, a visionary artist with a makeup kit, was already on standby. The most dangerous part of the operation was happening under Liam's own roof. Our living room became a disaster zone of discarded suits and spilled cologne. Elara, this shirt is a disgrace. The collar is limp. It lacks authority, he bellowed, throwing a silk shirt onto the sofa. I picked it up, my hands gentle. I'm sorry, Liam. I'll have it starched again. It's too late for that, he snapped, scrolling on his phone. I'm taking Isabella shopping tomorrow. A man in my position needs a companion who understands presentation. The mention of her name was a fresh wound, but I let it bleed silently. Of course. I hope you find what you're looking for. He didn't hear me. He was already on the phone, his voice dropping into that low, intimate purr he never used with me. Isabella, it's me. Clear your schedule tomorrow. We're going to make sure you're the most stunning woman in the room. I turned away, trembling with cold, hard fury, and began to mechanically prepare his dinner. As I chopped vegetables, I could hear him laughing on the phone, a rich, genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. No, don't be ridiculous. I would never bring her. She'd spend the whole night comparing the champagne to the cheap Prosecco she buys. Yes, I know. It's a burden, but what can I do? Each word was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I was the architect of this entire situation, the unseen director of the play he thought he was starring in. He saw a quiet, defeated wife. He didn't see the strategist. He didn't see the storm gathering beyond the horizon of his limited perception. He was planning a night of triumph, a celebration of his own status. But the Aurora was my dawn, and I was ready to step out of his shadow and into my own light. The day of the gala arrived, cloaked in the deceptive normalcy of a Saturday. The house buzzed with Liam's nervous energy, a stark contrast to the glacial calm I had forced upon my own soul. He was a symphony of rustling garment bags and expensive cologne. I was a portrait of domestic tedium, dressed in soft, worn jeans, a simple t-shirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail. I served him a light lunch, which he barely touched, Can't have a bloated stomach for the photographs, he declared, patting his flat abdomen. Of course, I murmured, clearing his plate. Will Isabella be meeting you here? He shot me a look, surprised I dared speak her name. No, I'm meeting her at the hotel. It's more discreet. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Ah, was all I said, a single syllable laden with meaning he was too self-absorbed to decipher. The afternoon whirred with his final preparations. I stood silently as he modeled his tuxedo, noting every perfect cut of jacket, the gleam of cufflinks, the drape of fabric. It's time, he said, checking his reflection. Don't wait up. It will be a late night. I won't, I promised, the truest thing I'd said all day. He left without a glance. The closing door sounded like a starting pistol. I waited exactly 10 minutes, standing still in the living room, listening to the silence. Then I moved to our bedroom, opened the closet, pushed past his immaculate suits, and reached behind a false panel I had installed months ago. From the hidden alcove, I pulled a garment bag and a small, hard-shell case. Unzipping the bag, I inhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Anya's vindication was a gown of liquid night, heavy silk that felt like cool water against my skin. Deceptively simple with a high neck and long sleeves, authoritative in its cut. The case revealed the Aurora set, a necklace, earrings, and bracelet centered on flawless diamonds surrounded by sapphires and aquamarines, mimicking the northern lights. My transformation began with a single act. In the master bathroom, I stared at my tired reflection, picked up scissors, and cut my thick ponytail away. The hair fell into the trash. I reshaped the remaining strands into a sleek bob, sharpening cheekbones and exposing my neck. An hour later, the woman in the mirror was a stranger, yet the most familiar version of myself. Powerful, authoritative, dressed in the black gown and icy jewels. Makeup bold with a smoky eye and crimson lip. I looked like a CEO, an owner myself. My hidden phone buzzed. The car is 2 minutes away. The eagle is in the nest and preening with his friend. Ready for your flight? I typed a single reply, ready. Slipping out the back door into the cool evening air, I left the prison of my marriage. The black sedan idled, a silent promise of vengeance. I slid inside, feeling no guilt, only a chilling certainty. Liam was at my hotel with his mistress, awaiting his moment of glory. He had no idea his host had just arrived. The ride to the Aurora was a smooth glide through a city I helped build, but felt separate from. Inside the car, the world was hushed. The only sound, the soft hum of the engine, and my own anticipatory heartbeat. Streetlights blurred into golden streaks, each a ticking second toward the violent, irrevocable collision of our lives. We didn't pull up to the glittering main entrance. The car slipped into a private underground tunnel, a vein of concrete known only to a few. Mr. Thorne opened the door, his calm face a rock in my churning sea. "Madame Ilara," he said, reverent, offering his hand. "You look formidable." Thank you, Thorn. Is everything in place? Flawlessly, he replied, leading me to the private elevator. The ballroom is at capacity, the atmosphere electric. Your guests are enjoying vintage Dom Perignon at the bar. The young lady is particularly effusive. I felt a cold smile. Let them enjoy their champagne, Thorn. The best is yet to come. A private elevator whisked us directly to the presidential suite on the penthouse floor. As the doors opened, I was greeted by a scene of organized chaos that was a balm to my soul. This was my world. Action, purpose, creation. Anya and Tanisha descended upon me in a whirlwind of excited energy. Ilara, the hair, you did it! It's absolute perfection! Anya squealed, circling me. And the dress? Oh, honey, the dress is a weapon. Tanisha, her artist's eyes critical and sharp, gently tilted my chin. The lipstick is good, but we need more highlight here. We want you to gleam from across the room. She set to work with a tiny brush, dusting my cheekbones with a powder that caught the light. You are not just attending a party, my dear. You are making an entrance onto the world stage. You must look like you own the very air people are breathing. And as I stood there, being fussed over by my loyal friends, I felt the last vestiges of the timid housewife slough away. I was being armored for battle, not with steel, but with silk and light. Thorn, I said, my voice cutting through their chatter. The feed. Of course, madame. He handed me a slim tablet. On the screen, split into multiple views, were live feeds from the discreet security cameras throughout the ballroom. And there they were. My breath caught for a moment, not in pain, but in a sort of clinical fascination. There was Liam, his arm possessively around Isabella's waist. She was wearing a gown of fiery crimson, a bold, attention-seeking choice that was both beautiful and utterly predictable. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a picture of vibrant, youthful triumph. Liam was beaming, his chest puffed out, accepting handshakes and backslaps from colleagues. He looked like a king holding court. I watched as he pointed out the intricate crystal work on the chandeliers, no doubt explaining them to Isabella as if he were a connoisseur. I saw him flag down a waiter, snapping his fingers with an imperiousness that made me cringe. This was the man I had cooked for, cleaned for, diminished myself for. This arrogant, posturing peacock. They look happy, Anya said, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she peered over my shoulder. They look oblivious, I corrected, handing the tablet back to Thorn. And that is their fatal error. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window that looked down over the city. From this height, the people below were specks, their lives and dramas rendered insignificant. It was a perspective I had craved. For too long, I had been one of those specks looking up at Liam's world. Now, I was the one looking down. The speech is prepared, madame, Thorn said softly, coming to stand beside me. The host is ready to introduce you in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, a lifetime, an instant. I could feel the eyes of my friends on me, their support a tangible force. I thought of the hidden receipt, The years of condescending remarks, the way he had told me I would embarrass him, the memory of his voice saying Isabella's name in our home with such casual intimacy was the final spark. The hurt was gone. In its place was a cold, clear, and focused resolve. "Are you ready?" Tanisha asked, her hand on my shoulder. I turned from the window. The woman reflected in the dark glass was no longer Ilara, the betrayed wife. She was Ilara, the architect, the owner, the storm. I met her gaze, and then I met the gazes of my friends. "Ready?" I said, my voice steady and low. "It's time to show my husband what true embarrassment really looks like. It's time to show him the woman he's been sleeping next to all these years." I turned and walked towards the door, the train of my gown whispering against the marble floor, like a promise of the reckoning to come. The gilded illusion of Liam's perfect night was about to be shattered, and I was the only one holding the hammer. The walk from the penthouse to the backstage area of the ballroom was a descent into a different realm. The hushed luxury of my private floors gave way to the controlled, buzzing energy of the event's nerve center. Staff moved with quiet efficiency, their headsets crackling with updates. I was a specter moving through them, my presence causing a ripple of respectful nods and widened eyes. They knew who I was. They knew the power I held in this place. Mr. Thorne stayed by my side, a steady, silent pillar. "They're about to introduce the host, madame. Your entrance is in 5 minutes." I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Through a narrow gap in the heavy stage curtains, I had a sliver of a view into the ballroom itself. The scale of it was breathtaking, even to me, its creator. A sea of black tuxedos and glittering gowns swirled under the celestial glow of the chandeliers. The air hummed with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and the low thrum of the orchestra. It was a living, breathing organism of wealth and influence. And there, not 50 feet from me, was the cancer at the heart of my own life. Liam and Isabella were at a prime table near the front. He was leaning in, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh, a tinkling, artificial sound that grated on my nerves. He looked so sure of himself, so utterly in his element. He had no idea the ground beneath his feet was nothing but a beautifully painted trapdoor. My eyes swept the room again, and I found them my in-laws, Arthur and Beatrice. They had managed to secure a table near the back, no doubt using Liam's name. Beatrice was dressed in a garish, gold-sequined gown, her eyes darting around, cataloging the luxury with a covetous glee. Arthur looked uncomfortable in his tuxedo, his face a mask of bewildered pride. They were vultures, waiting to feast on the scraps of my husband's perceived success. The house lights began to dim slightly. A spotlight clicked on, illuminating the center of the stage. The music swelled to a crescendo and then faded. A hush fell over the crowd, a palpable wave of expectation. The host, a renowned journalist known for her sharp intellect, walked onto the stage, her smile confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Welcome to the Aurora." A round of applause echoed through the hall. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it. "For years," the host continued, her voice resonating in the perfect acoustics, "the name behind this magnificent project has been a subject of much speculation. A visionary, a recluse, a genius. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. The individual who conceived of the Aurora, who nurtured it from a mere blueprint into the breathtaking reality you see around you tonight, is not just a brilliant business mind. She is a testament to the power of quiet determination, of building empires away from the blinding glare of the spotlight. Her philosophy is woven into the very fabric of this hotel," the host said, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "That true strength is often found in the most unexpected places. That value is not always loud, but often whispers. It is my profound honor and my great pleasure to introduce to you the founder, the owner, and the beating heart of the Aurora Group, Madame Alara Thorne. The use of my full married name was the final exquisite twist of the knife." For a split second, there was a silence so complete it was deafening. Then the spotlight swung away from the host, sweeping across the stage, and found me. I took a deep, steadying breath, and I stepped out of the shadows. The applause began, a wave that started at the back of the room and rolled forward, gaining volume and force. But I wasn't looking at the applauding masses. My eyes were locked on a single point in the audience, on Liam's face. I saw the journey of his understanding in horrifying slow motion. First confusion, his brow furrowed as he saw a woman in a stunning black gown walking into the light. Then recognition. His eyes widened, his jaw went slack. The color drained from his face, leaving a ghastly, waxy pallor. It was the look of a man who has just seen a ghost, a familiar, comforting ghost that has suddenly pulled out a knife. I walked to the center of the stage, the spotlight a warm halo, and accepted the microphone. The feel of it in my hand was familiar, a return to a self I had long forgotten. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified to fill every corner of the vast room. It was not the timid whisper I used at home. It was the voice of a leader. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the audience before letting it land, once more, on my husband. He looked like a man who had just been told the world was flat. "I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate the dawn of a new era," I continued, a small, polite smile on my lips. "The Aurora represents a great many things to me, but above all, it represents a simple truth, that the most brilliant light often emerges from the deepest darkness." I held Liam's terrified gaze, and I knew he understood every single devastating word. The applause that had filled the ballroom moments before seemed to have been sucked into a void, leaving behind a silence so profound I could hear the rustle of my own gown as I shifted my weight. All the air, all the sound, all the energy in the colossal room was now funneled into the space between my husband and me. The spotlight wasn't just on me. It was a laser, pointed directly at the crumbling ruins of his ego. Liam's face was a masterpiece of dawning horror. The confident, smug mask he had worn all night had fissured, then shattered, revealing the pale, trembling man beneath. He looked like a sleepwalker who had just woken to find himself on a ledge 1,000 feet in the air. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. It was the first time in years I had seen him utterly, completely speechless. Beside him, Isabella made a small, choked sound. The glass of champagne in her hand, which had been a prop in her performance of the triumphant mistress, tilted. For a moment, it seemed suspended in time, the golden liquid sloshing against the crystal rim. Then it slipped. The sound of the glass shattering on the marble floor was like a gunshot in the hushed room. The spell was broken. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, no longer whispers of admiration, but of shocked realization. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, fingers pointed. The socialites and CEOs who moments before had been vying for Liam's attention were now looking at him with a mixture of pity and cold clinical disdain. He was no longer the rising star. He was the punchline. He finally found his voice, a strangled, desperate croak. "Ilara?" It was my name, but it sounded foreign on his lips now. A question, a plea, a curse. He took a half step forward, as if to rush the stage, but the sheer, towering wall of my newfound authority seemed to physically stop him. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned my attention back to the microphone, my voice regaining its smooth public cadence. The journey to this night was not a solitary one, I continued, as if the seismic event at Table 8 had not just occurred. It was built on the belief that a foundation of integrity and hard work will always, always bear fruit. Every innocuous business platitude was now a barbed arrow aimed directly at his heart. I was speaking the language of the corporate world he so desperately wanted to conquer, and I was doing it from a throne he could never reach. I could see his mother, Beatrice, from the corner of my eye. Her face, usually a mask of superior disdain, was a grotesque canvas of confusion and dawning, avaricious terror. Her eyes were wide, her jaw slack. She was rapidly recalculating the entire universe, realizing that the nobody she had belittled for years was in fact the sun around which her son's tiny planet had been orbiting. Her coveted gold sequins suddenly looked cheap and pathetic under the true, unborrowed gleam of my diamonds. Liam finally found a shred of his old arrogance, a last desperate defense. He took another step, his voice rising, cracking with a mixture of fury and panic. "Ilara, what is the meaning of this? This is a joke. This is impossible." The crowd gasped at his outburst. The host moved to intervene, but I raised a single, calm hand, stopping her. I finally looked directly at him again, and this time I allowed a small, cold smile to touch my lips. "Is it, Liam?" I asked, my voice soft but amplified, carrying to the very back of the room. "Is it truly so impossible to believe that your wife could be more than the background noise of your life?" I had taken his moment of triumph and turned it into his most profound humiliation. The gala was no longer about his career or his status. It was now, and would forever be, about the night his wife revealed she was his superior in every way that mattered. And as I stood there, bathed in the light, watching him crumble, I knew the sound of that shattering champagne glass was just the beginning. It was the overture to the symphony of his ruin. The ballroom was a theater, and I had just directed its most shocking act. The silence that followed my question to Liam was heavier than before, thick with the unspeakable. All pretense of a celebratory gala had evaporated. This was a trial, and I was both judge and executioner. Liam stood frozen, a statue of shame and rage. I could see the calculations firing behind his eyes, the desperate search for a way to regain control, to spin this, to somehow make himself the victim. But there was no narrative he could craft that would overshadow the simple, brutal truth now displayed on the giant screen behind me. "Welcome, Madame Elora Thorne, Omer." I turned my back on him. It was a deliberate, dismissive gesture, more powerful than any words. I addressed the crowd once more, my voice regaining its polished, professional timbre, a stark contrast to the raw drama that had just unfolded. "The Aurora was built on a promise," I said, my gaze sweeping over the captivated, stunned faces. "A promise of excellence, of discretion, and of unparalleled experience. It is a promise I intend to keep for each and every one of you." I was no longer just the betrayed wife. In this moment, I was reclaiming my identity as a leader. I continued my speech, outlining the vision for the hotel, the exclusive amenities, the commitment to art and culture. With every word, I felt my power solidify. The guests, initially there for a party, were now witnesses to a corporate coronation and a personal reckoning rolled into one. From the corner of my eye, Mr. Thorne, with impeccable timing, was now standing near Liam and Isabella's table. He wasn't looking at them, but his presence was a silent, formidable reminder of the new hierarchy. 2 discreet security guards had also materialized nearby. Liam seemed to shrink under this unspoken pressure. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a hollow, shell-shocked stillness. Isabella, meanwhile, had begun to cry, not quiet, elegant tears, but messy, panicked sobs that ruined her meticulous makeup. I concluded my speech to a second, far more complex wave of applause. It was slower, more thoughtful, mingled with whispers and sidelong glances toward the spectacle at the front. The orchestra, taking its cue, struck up a soft, neutral melody. I descended the stage steps, my every move tracked by hundreds of eyes. I didn't look at Liam. I walked past him as if he were a piece of furniture, heading instead towards a group of investors from Singapore who were staring at me with a mixture of shock and newfound intense respect. "Madame Thorne," the eldest said, bowing his head slightly. "A most memorable introduction. Your vision is even more impressive now that we know its source." "Thank you, Mr. Lee," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "The vision is only the beginning. The execution is what matters." Every time I laughed at a mild joke, every time I engaged in a serious discussion about market trends, it was another twist of the knife in his side. He was forced to watch as the woman he had called a liability held court among the very people he had hoped to impress. I saw him finally stagger away from the table, leaving a weeping Isabella behind. He looked lost, his tuxedo now seeming like a costume he had no right to wear. He made his way toward the grand doors, his head down, trying to become invisible. He didn't get far. Mr. Thorne intercepted him with a quiet word. I was too far away to hear, but I saw Liam's shoulders slump in defeat. Thorne would be informing him that his access to the hotel and to the life he thought he was building was now permanently revoked. Our queen had made her move. The king was in checkmate, and the board was now mine alone. The party somehow continued. The music swelled again, this time with more conviction. The clink of glasses returned, though the conversations were now hushed, urgent, and undoubtedly about me. I was discussing sustainable architecture with a renowned Italian designer when I felt a presence at my elbow. It was Beatrice. Her face, usually a mask of pinched superiority, was now a desperate, trembling plea. The garish gold of her gown seemed to mock her. "Elara," she whispered, her voice cracking. She reached for my arm, but I subtly shifted my weight, letting her hand grasp empty air. "Elara, my dear, we had no idea." I turned to her, my expression one of polite, distant inquiry. "No idea about what, Beatrice?" I asked, my tone cool. "The hotel? I find that hard to believe. The brochures were quite detailed." Her eyes darted around, terrified of the scene she was causing, but more terrified of the financial abyss that had just opened up beneath her family. "You know what I mean? All this grandeur. We never would have if we had known," I finished for her, my voice dropping so only she could hear. "If you had known my net worth, you would have treated me with basic human decency." The civility evaporated, leaving only the cold, hard truth. "That says more about you than it ever did about me, Beatrice. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests who see me as more than just an accessory to their son's bank account." I turned my back on her, a perfect mirror of how I had dismissed Liam. The sputter of indignation and fear that died in her throat was the most satisfying sound I'd heard all night. I saw Arthur, her husband, standing a few feet away, looking old and broken. My focus, however, was pulled toward the main entrance. Liam was there, being escorted by Mr. Thorne and the 2 security guards. It wasn't a rough ejection. Thorne was far too professional for that, but it was a firm, undeniable removal. Liam's head was bowed, his posture defeated. He was a king being dethroned, stripped of his crown and cast out of his own castle. Just as he reached the towering double doors, he stopped. He turned, and his eyes found me across the crowded room. The hatred was gone, replaced by a hollow, devastating confusion. In that single, unguarded look, I saw the boy I had once fallen in love with, the one who had promised me the world before he decided I wasn't worthy of it. It was a fleeting glimpse, a ghost from a life long dead, and it was extinguished as quickly as it appeared. He turned and walked out. The doors closed behind him with a soft, final thud that echoed in the sudden quiet of my soul. A party raged on around me, a brilliant, swirling dream. But in the wake of his exit, a strange emptiness bloomed in my chest. It wasn't regret. It wasn't sadness for the end of our marriage. That had died a slow death over years. This was the emptiness that follows a cataclysm, the silence after the avalanche. I had spent so long planning for this moment, fueling myself with righteous anger, that I hadn't prepared for the hollowed-out calm that came after the explosion. A hand gently touched my elbow. It was Anya, her eyes sharp with concern. "You okay?" she murmured. That was biblical. I took a deep breath, the scent of 1,000 lilies and expensive perfume filling my lungs. "I will be," I said, and for the first time that night, I felt the truth of it. The anger had been my engine, but it had run its course. What was left was me. Just me, Ilara. "I will be," I repeated, a genuine small smile touching my lips. "Now I believe there's a bottle of champagne in my suite with our names on it. This party can run itself for a while." I linked my arm with hers, and together we turned away from the crowd, leaving the echo of my old life to fade into the grand, beautiful hall I had built. The gala was over. My life was just beginning. The penthouse suite was a sanctuary of silence, high above the fading echoes of the gala. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in streaks of rose and gold. A new day breaking over a new city, my city. Anya and Tanisha had left hours ago, after we had drained the champagne and dissected the night with the giddy, exhausted fervor of soldiers after a victorious battle. Now I was alone. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, wrapped in a plush robe, the Aurora diamonds resting in their case on the table beside me. The dress, Vindication, was carefully hung, a relic of a war already won. Below, the streets were beginning to stir with the mundane rhythm of a Sunday morning. Life went on. My life was going on, but on a fundamentally different axis. A soft knock sounded at the door. It was Thorne, holding a tablet and a fresh pot of coffee. His expression was, as always, impeccably neutral. "Good morning, Madame Ilara. I trust you rested?" I accepted the coffee, its rich, dark aroma, a comforting anchor. "There is, as you anticipated, some media fallout," he said, handing me the tablet. The screen showed the society pages and business blogs. headlines, a mix of awe and salacious glee. Cinderella is the CEO. The Aurora's secret is its owner's revenge, one screamed. Another, more respectable one, read, Thorne's gamble backfires, eclipsed by wife's billion-dollar empire. I skinned the articles. They had the facts mostly right, colored with the dramatic flair the situation deserved. My favorite was a quote from an anonymous industry insider. Liam Thorne was always a man who confused noise for power. Last night, he found out the difference. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was distant, like watching a play from the back row. The public victory was sweet, but it was the private one that mattered. And Liam? I asked, my voice even. Thorne cleared his throat. He returned to the marital residence last night. He was seen leaving this morning with a single suitcase. He has taken a room at the Fairmont. I nodded. So, he had left. The condo was in my name, purchased with the first major payout from my company. He had no legal claim to it. It was just one of many financial realities he was about to face. His access has been terminated. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. It is widely expected he will be asked to resign. The Henderson account has already withdrawn, Thorne continued. I took a sip of coffee. It was all so clinical. This was the consequence I had engineered. The destruction of his professional reputation, the collapse of the facade he valued above all else. Yet the taste wasn't as sweet as I had imagined. There is one more thing, madam, Thorne said, his tone shifting slightly. He called. He is requesting to see you. He says he's waiting at the condo. A jolt, unexpected and unwelcome, went through me. I had thought our last look in the ballroom was our final goodbye. The idea of facing him again, in the cold light of day, in the home that held the ghost of our past, felt like stepping backwards. I looked out the window again. The sun was higher now, burning away the pastel haze. I had a choice. I could let Thorne handle it. I could have my lawyers communicate through official channels. I could leave him to stew in his own ruin. Or I could face him one last time, not as the vengeful queen, but as the architect surveying the completed demolition. To close the door myself. I set my coffee cup down with a decisive click. Tell him I'll be there in an hour, I said. It was time to walk through the ashes of my old life and claim what was left. A drive the condo felt like traveling back in time, to a life that belonged to someone else. The sleek town car moved through the waking city, but the vibrant energy of the Aurora felt a world away. With every block, the weight of the past settled more heavily on my shoulders. I wasn't returning as a conqueror. I was an archaeologist visiting the ruins of a civilization I had once inhabited. The building, once a symbol of our shared success, now felt like a mausoleum. My key turned in the lock with a familiar sound, but the silence that greeted me was different. It was the silence of abandonment, of a story that had reached its final page. He was in the living room, standing by the window, his back to me. He wore the same clothes from the night before, the tuxedo now looking wrinkled and pathetic, a costume from a play that had ended in catastrophe. The air smelled stale, tinged with the faint, expensive scent of his cologne and something else, despair. He didn't turn as I entered. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, his voice raspy, stripped of its usual confident timbre. "You asked," I replied, my own voice calm in the hollow space. I didn't move further into the room. I stood near the doorway, a visitor in my own home. "I'm here." He finally turned. The man who faced me was a stranger. The arrogant glint in his eye was gone. The set of his jaw softened by shock. He looked older, the lines on his face etched deeper by a single night. He looked broken. "Why, Ilera?" The question was a raw plea. "All these years? Why the charade? Why let me—" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely around the room, a helpless motion that encompassed all the insults, all the condescension, all the years of him believing he was the superior one. "You never asked," I said simply. "You were so busy telling me who I was, you never bothered to find out. You wanted a wife who would make you feel big. The truth would have made you feel small." He flinched as if I'd struck him. "I loved you," he whispered, but the words sounded hollow, a line from a script he could no longer remember. "No, Liam," I said, my voice gentle but unyielding. "You loved the idea of me, the quiet, supportive wife who asked for nothing and existed to bolster your ego. You didn't love the woman who could build an empire. That woman threatened you." He sank onto the arm of the sofa, his head in his hands. "The company, the board, they're forcing me out. My career is over." I felt a pang, not of sympathy, but of a profound, weary sadness. Even now, in the rubble of our marriage, his first thought was for his career, his reputation, his prized possessions. "I know," I said. He looked up, his eyes blazing with a final spark of anger. "You did this. You orchestrated this humiliation. You destroyed me." "I didn't destroy you, Liam," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I simply stopped holding you up. You were the one who chose to be unfaithful. You were the one who chose to bring your mistress to my hotel. You were the one who spent years systematically dismantling my spirit. I just handed you the tools to finish the job on yourself." The fight went out of him again, leaving only a devastating emptiness. "What happens now?" he asked, sounding like a lost child. "Now you leave," I said, my tone final. "My lawyers will be in touch. The condo, the cars, the investments, they're all in my name. You'll receive what is legally yours, which, given your spending habits and the prenuptial agreement your own lawyers insisted on, isn't much." He stared at me, the full reality of his situation dawning on him. No wife, no home, no career, no money. The kingdom he had built was made of sand, and the tide I had controlled had finally come in. "I have nothing," he breathed, the words a death sentence. "You have the consequences of your choices," I corrected him softly. I looked around the room, one last time, at the furniture we had chosen together, the art he had picked to impress his clients. It was all just stuff. It held no meaning for me anymore. I'm not coming back, Liam. This is goodbye. I turned and walked out of the living room, out of the condo, out of his life. I didn't look back. There were no more words to say, no more battles to fight. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't hear the sound of it locking. I heard the sound of a chapter closing, forever. The ghosts could have the house. I was finally free. The city air outside the condo felt different. It was no longer the heavy, oppressive atmosphere I had carried with me on the drive over. It was just air, clean, neutral, and full of possibility. The sun was fully up now, warming the pavement. It felt like the first dawn of my life. I didn't get back into the town car. I dismissed the driver with a grateful nod and decided to walk. I needed to feel the solid ground beneath my feet, to move through the world on my own terms, with no destination in mind other than forward. People rushed past me, on their way to brunch, to church, to see family. Their lives were continuing, their dramas small and personal, unseen by the world. For the first time in a very long time, I was one of them, just a woman walking on a Sunday morning. The anonymity was a gift. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Anya. "Just checking in. You alive?" I typed back, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time that day. More than ever, going for a walk. Want company? Not today. Understood. Call if you need anything, even just to scream. I put the phone away. I didn't need to scream. The storm had passed. The silence inside me was no longer empty. It was peaceful. I walked for blocks, my mind blissfully quiet. I wasn't planning my next business move. I wasn't rehearsing arguments with Liam. I wasn't steeling myself against his mother's barbs. I was just walking, observing, the way the light caught the edge of a building, the sound of a child laughing, the smell of coffee from a corner cafe. These were the small, beautiful details I had been too numb to notice for years. I realized with a start that I was hungry, truly, simply hungry, not eating because it was time to eat, or because I needed fuel to get through the next battle, but because my body was asking for food. I stopped at a small, unassuming bakery I had passed 1,000 times, but never entered. The bell above the door jingled. The warmth inside was a physical embrace. The air was thick with the scent of sugar, yeast, and brewing coffee. A woman with a kind face and flour-dusted hands smiled at me from behind the counter. "What can I get for you, dear?" "Everything," she said with a warm laugh. "But the almond croissant came out of the oven 20 minutes ago. It's still warm." I said, "I'll take one, and a black coffee." I sat at a small table by the window. The simple white paper bag and the sturdy ceramic mug feeling more real and substantial than any fine china I'd ever used. I broke off a piece of the croissant. It was flaky, buttery and filled with sweet marzipan. It was, without exaggeration, the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. As I sat there, eating my croissant and drinking my coffee, watching the world go by, I felt it. Not triumph, not vengeance, not even relief. I felt a quiet, steady, unshakable joy. The kind of joy that comes not from external validation or the defeat of an enemy, but from the profound peace of being exactly who you are, where you are meant to be. Liam was in a hotel room, facing the abyss. My in-laws were likely in a panic, their social standing in tatters. The media was feasting on the carcass of our marriage. And I was in a bakery, eating a croissant. I was free, not just from him, but from the woman I had become to survive him. Elara was back. She was a little bruised, a lot wiser, and finally, completely and utterly her own. Aurora was my creation, my empire, my legacy. But this simple moment of quiet contentment, this was my victory. The world knew my name. In the days that followed, Elara Thorne was no longer just a byline on a society page or a silent partner in a marriage. It was a headline. It was a brand. My inbox flooded with interview requests, business proposals, and messages from old acquaintances suddenly remembering our profound connection. I let Mr. Thorne handle most of it, a gatekeeper to the newfound fortress of my privacy. What I couldn't hide forever. The Aurora was my statement to the world, and now I had to be its voice. My first official act as the publicly known owner was to call a full staff meeting. I stood before them in a simple, elegant pantsuit, my new haircut feeling less like a rebellion and more like my natural state. I know the past week has been unusual, I began, my voice clear and carrying through the hotel's grand conference room. A few nervous smiles flickered across their faces. The spotlight can be distracting, but I want you to remember this. The work you do here, the excellence you deliver every day, is what built the Aurora. Not the headlines. Your integrity is the foundation of this hotel, and that will never change. The applause was genuine, their relief palpable. I had reassured them, but more importantly, I had reassured myself. I was still the same leader I had been in the shadows. The only thing that had changed was the lighting. Later, in my new office, a sun-drenched space with panoramic views that I had never dared to use before, I met with my legal team. The divorce proceedings were a cold, clinical affair. Liam, through his lawyer, was contesting the prenuptial agreement, a final, pathetic gasp of his entitlement. My lead counsel, a formidable woman named Miss Sharma, laid out the documents. His claims are without merit, Elara. He's arguing undue influence, claiming he didn't understand the full extent of your assets when he signed. A dry laugh escaped me. He didn't understand because he never asked. He was too busy being the star of his own show to read the playbill. Ms. Sharma allowed a small, sharp smile. Precisely. We'll crush him. He'll get the standard settlement as per the agreement, which given his documented extracurricular expenses, won't cover his lifestyle for more than a year. I looked out the window at the city stretching out before me. I don't want to crush him, Anya, I said, surprising myself. I just want him gone. Make the standard settlement, but add a clause, a non-disclosure agreement in perpetuity. I never want to hear his voice or his mother's in the media again. That's the price. It wasn't mercy. It was pragmatism. Dragging it out would only keep me tied to him. This was a surgical severance. Clean. Final. After the lawyers left, I remained at my desk. The silence was different from the silence of the condo. This was a productive silence filled with potential. On my desk was a proposal from the city's premier art museum. They wanted to host a gala. A new architectural digest wanted a feature on the hotel's design. A women's leadership foundation asked if I would speak at their annual summit. For years, my life had been a reaction to Liam's needs, his moods, his ambitions. Now, for the first time, I was presented with a blank slate and 1,000 different colors. What did I want? I picked up the proposal from the Leadership Foundation. I thought of the young women who would be in that audience, maybe some who felt small, who were being told their dreams were too loud, their ambitions unseemly. I thought of the receipt hidden in the picture frame, the secret I had kept for so long. I opened a new document on my computer. A cursor blinked, a tiny, steady pulse of possibility. I began to type, a foundation for unseen architects. It wasn't just about charity. It was about building something new from the rubble of the old. A legacy that wasn't made of marble and glass, but of opportunity and ignited potential. My story had been one of hidden strength. Maybe I could help others skip the hiding part altogether. The Aurora was my past and my present, but this new blueprint in my hands, this was my future. A month had passed. A month of blessed, productive silence from Liam. The media frenzy had died down, replaced by a steady hum of respect in business circles. I had moved into the penthouse of the Aurora permanently, making the hotel my true home. It was a symbol of my independence, a fortress and a sanctuary rolled into one. My days were now filled with the vibrant chaos of creation. Meetings for the new foundation, design consultations for a potential Aurora property in Tokyo, strategy sessions with my now public board of directors. I was no longer a ghost, but a force. The world was adjusting to the real me. Which is why the call from the front desk one evening was so jarring. Madame Elara, the night manager's voice was tense, apologetic. "I'm so sorry to disturb you, but there's a woman here. She's quite insistent on seeing you. She says her name is Isabella." A name landed like a stone in the still waters of my new life. Isabella. I had almost forgotten her. She was a footnote in my story, a minor character whose part had ended. What could she possibly want? To plead? To threaten? A morbid curiosity stirred within me. "Send her up to the private lounge on the 40th floor, I instructed, my voice calm. and have security discreetly nearby. I didn't change out of my comfortable cashmere loungewear. I didn't put on any armor. I simply took the private elevator down, my reflection in the polished brass doors showing a woman who was no longer threatened by the specters of her past. She was standing by the window when I entered, her back to me. The defiant glamour was gone, replaced by a raw, nervous energy. "Elara," she said, her voice small, "thank you for seeing me." "I'm curious," I said, not offering a seat. I remained standing, a clear message about the nature and duration of this visit. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" She wrung her hands, a gesture of such genuine distress that I knew this wasn't a performance. I ended it. The day after the gala. I haven't spoken to him since. "I'm not sure why that's my concern," I replied, my tone cool. "Because I was wrong," she blurted out, tears welling in her eyes. "I knew he was married. He told me it was a marriage of convenience, that you were a simple woman, that you didn't understand him. He made it sound like you were holding him back. I was stupid and flattered by the attention. I listened, saying nothing. Her confession was not an apology to me. It was a purging of her own guilt. He lied to both of us," she continued, a tear finally escaping. "He used me to feel powerful, and he used you for everything else. I lost my job. The gossip, it's been unbearable. I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what he is, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I was a part of it." She stood there, weeping quietly in the opulent lounge, a broken pawn in a game she never understood. I felt a pang of something that wasn't quite pity, but a distant, weary recognition. She was another victim of Liam's fantasy, another person he had molded to fit his narrative. We had both been playing parts in his play. "Young woman," I said, my voice softer than I intended, "your apology is noted, but it doesn't change what happened. The best thing you can do for yourself now is to forget about Liam and forget about me. Build a life that doesn't revolve around the approval of a man who sees people as props. That's what I'm doing." She looked at me, truly looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than fear or regret. It looked like resolve. "Thank you," she whispered. She turned and left without another word, a solitary figure disappearing into the elevator. I stood alone in the lounge, the city lights twinkling below. Isabella's visit was an unexpected echo, a reminder of the toxic world I had left behind. But it didn't touch me. It only reinforced the solidity of my new foundation. The past could knock, but it no longer had a key. I was the only one who held the keys now. 6 months. It felt like a lifetime. The Elara Thorne Foundation for Unseen Architects had its launch gala at the Aurora, a gala that was about promise, not punishment. The ballroom, once the site of my personal reckoning, was now filled with the brilliant, buzzing energy of young female coders, engineers, and artists, their dreams almost tangible in the air. I moved through the crowd, not as a figure of scandal, but as a patron, a guide. This was the legacy that mattered. My divorce was final. Liam had accepted the settlement and the silence it demanded. I heard through the grapevine he had moved to another city, a smaller pond where he could try to be a bigger fish. I felt nothing. He was a chapter I had read, absorbed, and closed. After the foundation gala, I found myself back in the penthouse, but the energy was different. The drive for vengeance that had fueled me was gone. The quiet peace of the bakery had settled into a permanent state of being. I had built my empire, secured my freedom, and launched my legacy. So why did I feel a new, quiet restlessness? I walked out onto the sprawling terrace. The city was a tapestry of light below me, a kingdom I had conquered. But a queen who only rules what she already owns is not a queen for long. She is a curator. Anya found me there later, a glass of wine in each hand. "Penny for your thoughts, O mighty conqueror," she said, handing me a glass. I took it, smiling. I was just thinking, what's next? Anya leaned on the railing beside me. Next, you could retire, travel the world, buy a small island. You've earned a decade of naps. I shook my head, the answer coming to me as clearly as the stars beginning to pierce the twilight sky. That's not it. The aurora was my response to being trapped. The foundation is my response to being unseen. They were both born from a reaction to my past. "And now?" Anya asked, her voice gentle. "Now I want to build something that comes purely from joy, from curiosity, not from a need to prove something or fix something." I looked at her, the idea taking shape, thrilling and terrifying in its lack of definition. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe it's not another hotel. Maybe it's a tech startup again. Maybe it's a vineyard in Italy. The what doesn't matter yet. What matters? She pressed. The why, I said, the truth dawning on me with perfect clarity. It matters that it's my choice. Not an escape, not a rebuttal, just a desire. For the first time in my life, my horizon is completely uncharted, and I'm not afraid of it. Anya clinked her glass against mine. To the uncharted horizon, then. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights mimic the constellations above. The story of the betrayed wife was over. If you felt the weight of Alara's silence and the thrill of her reclaiming her voice, if you were holding your breath as she stepped onto that stage and took back her power, then you understand that every ending is a new beginning. Her story of becoming the architect of her own life is far from over. The uncharted horizon is calling. What will she build when she's building purely from joy? What new challenges will she face as a titan of industry, no longer hidden in the shadows? The next chapter of her journey is waiting to be told. This is where you come in. Your support is the signal that stories of strength, resilience, and quiet triumph deserve to be heard. So, let me know you want part 2. Like this video if you were inspired by Alara's courage. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next step in her journey. and so you can join us for other powerful stories of transformation. Comment below with the word Aurora. Let's fill the comments with light, a signal from all of you that you're ready to see what dawns for her next. Tell me the city you're listening from. I read every single comment, and it's my favorite way to feel connected to this incredible community. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. And remember, no matter what shadows you may be in, your own dawn is always within your power to create. Until next time.